Welcome to the Know Your Ship podcast, presented by eHub. I'm your host, Frank Dolce. So round two, we might need to go more than that.
No, my pleasure.
Of course, I'm speaking to the man who needs no introduction.
So funny.
It's the best. Top 10 motivational speaker in the world, not just in domestically, in the world. And I know you don't like motivational speaker. I know you like inspirational. But tell us quickly, why don't you like motivational?
It's not even politically correct anymore, but I used to say when it was funny back in the day, I don't want to be a motivational speaker because they always say stupid things like we become what we think about. That's not true. If that was true, I'd have been a woman by the time I was 12 years old. So forgive my sins, but it's still funny.
It's still funny.
Actually, it's still true.
Okay, top 10 motivational, inspirational speaker in the world. Author or co-author of 37 New York Times bestsellers.
Author, not co-author.
Author.
I'm the primary contributing author to all the Chicken Soup for the Soul books, so that's an anthology collection of authors and stories. But
okay, that alone could consume somebody's lifetime, but that's not all you've done. In addition, you're the Utah. You have been named the Utah Father of the Year. I don't even know how you start.
The American Diabetes Association hosts an event in all 50 states. Mm-hmm. And the criterion is just someone, a father, obviously, who honors fatherhood, who honors every opportunity to discuss what it really means to be a man and to step in our masculinity and not cow down or back off from society or social norms that say basically back off, big boy. And we need to stand in our masculinity. We need to do what is required. And I'm a songwriter. I've got some gold records in country music. And one of the songs, I got some great songs like Had I Shot You When I Met You, I'd Be Out of Jail by now. My wife ran off with my best friend and I'm going to miss him dearly. I had a song inspired by my junior prom date, How Can I Miss You If You Won't Go Away? But on a serious note, one of the best songs I ever wrote, it was a tribute to my dad, whom I love and admire. Used to get a lot of radio play. It's called Special Man, lyrical hook. Any male can be a father, but it takes a special man to be a dad. Mm. And so I was honored as someone who tries to focus in on work-life balance is unacceptable. It's unachievable because it's an either-or proposition. Mm-hmm. But when you talk about prioritizing, it's an either-and proposition. You can really have it all. Maybe we can talk about that, righteous routines, holy habits, whatever absolutely. We have to do in the morning. A dear friend of mine, Gary Brecka, check him out, 10X Health. He's famous for saying, if you're selfish in the morning, you can be selfless for the rest of the day. So, unpublished phone number. Hopefully when I came home every time, sometimes red eyes to get back just to see my son play or to see a music concert and then hop on a plane and leave again. But it's important that we focus in on celebrating Dad's Day, not just Father's Day. Mm-hmm.
Well,
I remember when we roasted Charles Barkley down at the Mandalay Bay, and he's a piece of work. I admire him. He's such a good guy, and I love the guy. But, you have to yank these guys' chains, especially professional athletes. And one of the great lines was, if you remember, Charles Barkley, he got on TV and said, I don't want to be a role model. I just want to be an athlete.
Famous commercial, yeah.
And I basically rebutted that statement at his roast and said, Charles, I'm sorry, you're a role model because you're the only guy in the NBA who doesn't have to visit 12 states on Father's Day. Got a good laugh, more truth and humor. Right. But let's just be responsible dads.
Yeah.
Sorry to go off on that tangent, but that's really important to us.
I think it's great. And I really like the leaning into the masculinity. I don't know why we have to take that out of society today. There's so many positives. Now, there's probably some downside that goes along with it. But the role of a father figure, you can't undo what a father means to a family and a mother together.
Absolutely.
In raising kids. So I completely celebrate
And because
that.
we're both athletes, one of the social stigmas about being a man is be a big boy, don't cry. And what we have to do is eliminate that social stigma that it's a sign of weakness to reach out for help. There's no reason for a man to take his life. If there's a way for us to really understand the significance of mental health issues as athletes, when you go into the gym, the only way you can max out your bench is to ask for a spot. The only way you can push yourself is to ask for help. And then when we leave the gym, for some reason, we don't want to create discomfort on purpose, and we just wuss out. We want a sale in every store and princess parking in every mall, and a little cool breeze blowing over our shoulder from Malibu Canyon, 90-degree weather, and that's not reality. So when we step into our masculinity, it's a sign of strength to ask for help, to reach out, especially if things are going south, especially if we're having suicidal ideologies. And I've been there, done that. We can talk about that if you want. It's so important for men to realize that it's a definite sign of strength to say, you got me, help me with this lift, help me with this bench. I can do it with your help.
Yeah. I think this ties into one of your other principles, and I haven't even gotten through the introduction yet. We're going, we're going way off.
Please go ahead. Yeah.
Sure. Yeah. But there's this concept of raise the bar. You tell a great story. I'll let you tell that story at some point. But, doing only what you're asked. But are you asking yourself enough? And I feel like that's related to what you're talking about in being a father, in being a man. Are we asking enough of ourselves to contribute to society, to contribute to families, to be examples for others? I like the similarities between those stories.
Yeah. When we start talking about balancing our lives, every guru, my mentor and sponsor in the National Speakers Association was Zig Ziglar. So we were dear friends for 30 years. Every guru, Dr. Norman Vincent Peale, Robert Schuller, some of the good old boys, and the Tony Robbins, the Brendon Burchards of the world, they all have their version of the balance wheel, but most of them have only dissected life into 6 categories, and they named them nouns, and nouns evoke no emotion: physical, mental, spiritual, social, financial, and family. So in my experience, and I brought it up, obviously I highlight that in my third law in the art of significance. There are 9 areas of life, 9 aspects of life. In order for us to be the best version of ourselves, an example for our children, we need to be the best version of ourselves in all 9 categories. And I didn't use nouns as their title. I put them into action verbs. So you want to take action. So instead of physical, the first of the 9 areas is called physical fitness. You don't go to the gym once. It's a daily routine. You got to push yourself. It's not mental, it's continuous education. Don't waste a good recession. What did you learn? How did you grow during COVID? Every morning I wake up at 5 a.m. no matter what. When the alarm goes off, it's better to be disciplined than motivated. And I know me. If my feet don't hit the carpet in my master suite and I'm not downstairs in my gym by 5:05, I've already started to save my money up for liposuction and a tummy tuck. I'm like, I don't think anything should be lifted if it doesn't have to be moved, and I'm not running if no one's chasing me. I'm through with this. I've worked too hard for 13 years playing football. But then the night before, I decide what podcast I'm going to listen to while I'm lifting weights. So when I hit the gym, I have a cold plunge. I call it the Zen Buddhist corner of our house because my wife has candles and amethysts and crystals and lights. Oh, my goodness. But I cold plunge every morning, 42 degrees for 6.5 minutes. And I'm telling you what, off camera, we could talk about all the things that happens to our bodies when we get that cold. But the coolest thing about that is after I've frozen my cahoochies off, can we say that on the air?
Yes.
I'm just talking about my shoulder, my hands. What happens is if we naturally allow our bodies to warm themselves up, you burn 830 to 940 calories. It's the best organic, natural way of weight loss you can have. And it gives you a 7-hour dopamine rush that lasts through the entire day. So now I get on the pre-core for about 10 minutes while my body's still freezing cold and I don't pull any muscles. I had to work my mind through that because we're taught to warm up, and now I'm freezing. And then I have a great gym in my house and I go around my routine. But while I'm doing that, I'm listening to a podcast so I can better myself, continuous education. The third aspect is deeper spirituality. And I really want to make it clear I'm a very devout man of faith, but what we have to do is understand that religion is for those who are afraid to go to hell. Spirituality is for those of us who have already been there. And I honor you, Franco, for being a spiritual being. You're always such a good man of integrity. And, I was a Boy Scout. We can focus in on trustworthy, loyal, helpful, friendly, courteous, kind, obedient, cheerful, thrifty, brave, clean, and reverent. That's character education that we don't learn in school. And that's why we cherish our football experience with the coaches that actually taught us how to push ourselves beyond our capacity and potential as human beings. And back to the father figure, that's why, I played under Coach Mack, and he was the offensive line coach and an offensive coordinator in those days. But having a chance to interact with the Utes as a huge supporter, Crimson Club member and fan, to talk to so many athletes and realize that when they came from single-parent families, that father figure in their life was so critically important, like you said, more of a dad figure. But in order to be a father figure and a dad, you have to have respect. So think about it. The definition of sales is the transference of trust. The definition of leadership is the transference of trust. And human beings are hardwired not to trust strangers. So in a sales presentation, in a leadership experience, what we have to do is focus in on transferring that trust as quickly as possible so people respect us enough to do what we ask them to do. I'd rather see a sermon preached than hear one any day. I'd rather you would walk with me than merely point the way, Edgar Guest's famous poem. It's example. And so when you go back to the 9 aspects of life, if we're not the best we can be physically, if we're just some big out of shape fat slob, how in the world can we expect our children and our coworkers and our friends to respect us? And in our climate society, body image is everything. And I'm not dissing anybody who's big boned, who has a great muscular structure, who happens to be a solid physical human being. That's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about those who want us to celebrate people who have not exercised in 17 years, who have given themselves type 2 diabetes, who are not catching the vision that this is the temple of God. We only got one body. And if we don't have energy and strength to do what is required of us in a physical way, personally and professionally, how can we expect to be that respected father or dad? How can we be respected as a spouse? How can we be respected as a teammate? And so spirituality is still critically important. It's so vitally important that we understand that we're spiritual beings having a physical experience. I know that's so cliche, but spirituality isn't just about relationships with heaven. It's about doing the right thing simply because it's the right thing to do. If you think about it, every person born into this world was born with a conscience, an inherent ability to discern right from wrong, truth from error. I talk about this in my book, The Art of Significance. And if you believe that as I do, the reality is our conscience will never fail us. Only our desire to follow it decreases as we continue to do the wrong thing. So an example would be, you have this amazing production staff, and you and I are sitting here, so there's 5 of us in the room. Let's say we leave this room and go to a adjoining room in your beautiful office complex. And when we walk into that room, the room smells so bad. It stinks so badly that our eyes start to water, our noses start to bleed, our ears start to ring.
That'd be our development team.
And we kick into automatic gag reflex. We can't even breathe. But you realize if we stay in that smelly, stinky room for 5 to 10 minutes, it no longer smells. We become desensitized. It's the new norm. And what is the new norm coming out of COVID? What is the new norm when we hang around with the wrong people? Remember, Dr. Jim Rohn said we become the average of the 5 people we associate with the most, which means we must be willing to pay any price and travel any distance to associate with extraordinary human beings. And in order to attract an extraordinary human being, we must first be an extraordinary human being. Law of attraction, we don't attract who we want, we attract who we are. If we're hanging around with the wrong people, it's easy to go into a smelly room and into a clean, wonderful room and stink it up. with our lack of integrity, with our lack of focus on becoming the best version of ourselves. I don't want to bore your listeners, but let's just go through the rest of the 9 categories.
Yeah.
So spirituality is number 3. Emotional stability is number 4. Under pressure, you don't rise to the occasion. You fall to your level of training. That's why we train and practice and prepare so hard. So I've tried to define pressure. Pressure is not something that's naturally there. It's created when you question your own ability, when you know what you've been trained to do. There's never any pressure. That's why we train and prepare and practice so hard. Social networking. We already talked about it. We become the average of the 5 people we associate with the most. It's so critically important that we understand that the goal is to associate with extraordinary human beings, even online, even in a podcast. I honor you, bro, for hosting this. The 6th category is financial literacy. 78% of retired athletes, mostly football players, are bankrupt within the first 3.5 years after retirement. Mm-hmm. That's just so sad. We need financial literacy. Family togetherness is number 7. And we've already talked about that. No other success can compensate for failure in the home. It's so critically important. And number 8 is fun and recreation. And number 9 is charitable giving. You know, if you ever feel down and out, go serve someone. Go do something for someone else. And it's amazing how it triggers that dopamine. It triggers serotonin, oxytocin, the recognition of love drugs, where we feel better about ourselves and we want to do it again. So sorry to go off on that tangent, but that's the goal, is to become the very best balanced human being we can be in all 9 categories. So if I meet someone who's mega wealthy, and I have, go to my website, danclark.com. I've interviewed all the presidents, sheikhs, billionaires. Some of them are so unhappy. They have all the money in the world, but they have no family or friends. Mm-hmm. You know, they've sold their soul to gain the whole world, and then they've lost their soul. Or I meet someone who's mega wealthy and he's just this big slob and has no family. Or I meet someone who's this gym rat who's in such perfect shape. You know, the 6-pack, the 8-pack. I'm writing a new country song. There's a 6-pack in there somewhere. But they have no money. They're out of balance. They have no family. Or you find someone who's a spiritual guru, God bless them, but they have no career. They have no money. And they're out of shape. So the goal is for us to figure out a way to be the best version of ourselves one day at a time, because we can, not because it's expected by others, but because it's demanded of ourselves. Sorry for my rant.
No. See, this is the thing that people are getting right now. And this is the thing that I get when I listen to you and I get a chance to be with you, is I always feel inspired to raise the bar, to set a new level, to achieve more. And it's not necessarily, in fact, I would say it's not at all about me. It's about, what am I doing for others? I think that's the energy that you give. It feels like you're constantly doing for others. And so when you say, I like me best when I'm with you, I want to see you again. I'm just going to tell you, that's the secret. That is Dan Clark's secret. Because when I'm with you, I feel like the best me. And I want to see you again.
No, thanks. I appreciate that. That's the goal. Isn't that the purpose of every relationship?
But we get in our own way. I'm hoping we can unpack that. There's so much that you talked about that we'll get through. But I always get in my own way. I feel like I get in my own way. You know, you start taking these tangents when you understand the path. And part of my challenge, maybe we can talk about that sometime, is, hey, stay on the path. These are the ways that you stay on the path. One thing that you mentioned about extraordinary people, you're an extraordinary person, and you attract extraordinary people. That's the reason Nancy Reagan handpicked you to be the primary presenter for her Just Say No campaign in the Reagan White House. That must have been exhausting and
I spoke in
unbelievable
3 schools,
experience.
3 high schools every day, 15 a week for 140 school days a year. And then I did about 75 to 100 college university campuses on the off season. from 1983 to 1989, way before you were born. But yeah, that's part of my legacy.
It's a great part of your legacy. You've been in front of everybody. I mean, I want to say that you've shadow boxed with Muhammad Ali,
Absolutely.
who was a hero of mine and of my father growing up.
I'll tell you a great story. I was a state Golden Gloves boxing champion here.
Yeah.
And so he was my hero. I had tassels on my boots, and, you know, I had the Clark shuffle. You know, he called it the Clark scuffle. But I had really fast hands. And fast forward to 1988, I'm speaking in Berrien Springs, Michigan at Andrews University, and I finished my speech, and I'm in the Union Building doing a book signing. And these two lads walked by talking about Muhammad Ali had been on campus, and I stopped dead in my tracks. I'm like, really, where is he? They said, no big deal. He lives here. He comes here every day. I'm like, really? So I finished my book signing, and I asked the student body president, do you know where Muhammad Ali lives? He goes, yeah, on the outskirts of town. He bought Al Capone's 88 acres out there. He had colonial mansion, pillars, awesome.
Why not?
I said, do you own a camera? He goes, why? Do you want to go to his house? I'm like, yeah. So he invites two of his buddies. The four of us get in his clunker car, and we drive out to the outskirts of town, and here's this mansion, circular driveway, gate open, and it didn't say no trespassing. It said welcome. I said, I'm going to knock on his door. They're like, you are? I said, you coming? They're like, no. I go up, I knock on his door. His wife answers.
Yeah.
She says, hi. I said, hi. She says, may I help you? I said, yeah. Is Muhammad in? She goes, yeah. May I tell him who's calling? I said, yeah, Dan. She goes and gets him. 6'3", 225-pound, larger than life superhero, filling his doorway, and my heart's pounding. I'm like, oh my gosh. He goes, hey, with the low breathy voice, hey, you want to come in? I'm like, yeah, I'm here with 3 other guys. Can I invite them in? Yeah. I'm like, they're like, no way. They're diving over bushes. They slide into his front entranceway for the next 5 hours. Remember, this is pre-Parkinson's. Yeah. For the next 5 hours, we watch his greatest fights on his big screen. Fast forward, I actually spoke in Arenado Coliseum in Manila, where they have the Thrilla in Manila. Him and Joe Frazier. I'm in the green room getting ready to go speak to 25,000 folks upstairs, and I'm looking at the windows, you know, and I'm just getting fired up. What a dream come true. Thrilla Manila, all of his greatest fights, how would co-sell. I mean, we're just doing the whole thing. He ends up feeding us, does some magic. And when the day is done and we're getting ready to leave, he said, Danny, you have any questions? I said, yes. I said, what was your number one go-to exercise to get you in the best shape? He said, stomach crunches. I said, really? I said, how many did you do? He said, I don't know. I never counted until they started to hurt. I said, what do you mean? He said, there's a giant difference between training to fight and training to win. And I said, okay, champ, you're 3-time world champ, which means you've been defeated by 2 inferior opponents. Why? He said, I got complacent. I said, what do you mean? He said, I forgot that once the fight begins, I no longer hold the title. I've put it up for grabs, and I must become brilliant at the basics and fight as hard as I did the first time I won it to win it back. The lessons of the superstars. So yeah, I met everybody on the planet, but I didn't just get a photo op. I interviewed them. I have real relationships with them. And when I talk and tell these stories, I want to make sure I share the life lessons that can transform our lives.
Absolutely. Well, that's a life lesson.
Absolutely.
You know, learning how to, every time you step in the ring, the title's stripped away, and your desire and your want and your preparation has to be just like the first time.
And every day's a new ring.
And every day's a new ring. I'm always fascinated. You know, obviously Michael Jordan is one of a kind, because even with all, and you tell a great story about him, even with all of his success, he always prepared for more success. I'm using the word success, maybe achievement. I don't know what the right word is, but it never seemed to me like he became complacent. There are a few of the great ones like that. Wayne Gretzky, it never got old to him. He never stepped back. For a long time, I felt that way about Tiger Woods. Now his health issues are kind of making him struggle. What do you see? And you've, by the way, all those people that I've mentioned, There's a list. There's probably more people or fewer people off the list that you haven't visited.
They're so funny.
With, but all of those people on that list, you have some relationship with. What is it? Like, can you boil it down with all of those guys who have all of the talent and achieve so much and still fight to achieve every single day? What is that secret?
That's the secret.
Yeah.
You left Kobe Bryant out of our conversation. And if you look at the history of Kobe Bryant, he was drafted out of high school at 19 years of age.
Mm-hmm.
And after the draft announcements, and if you look up his draft class, who else was drafted in the same draft that he was? Every single one of those young men who were drafted the same year, the same day that he was, went out celebrating, and Kobe Bryant went to the gym. There's something different about saying, I need to get better, and I know I can get better, and craving through curiosity, childlike wonderment. I wonder what I could do if I just put in the work. When I talk to sales organizations, the toughest challenge, number one, for CEOs that I've interviewed, over 6,000 audiences in 76 countries now. I just got back from South Africa. The CEOs say their number one challenge is getting their people to care as much about the organization as they do. And when you think about that word care, when I love doing team building, and I'm my renegade maverick personality, I challenge the status quo and disrupt. And maybe we can talk about that.
Mm-hmm.
Law number 6 in my book, The Art of Significance. But when you talk to sales professionals, when you talk to just coworkers, the goal, there has to be 2 goals. What one thing can I do today to make myself better, more valuable in the marketplace? And what one thing can I do today to make my teammates better?
Yeah.
Think about it, we win and lose as a team, but we win and lose because of individuals. We can go down that rabbit hole. I love that, just to yank the chain of the world. But still, back to your conversation, I'm not offline. These individuals are willing to put in the work, not because it's expected by their dad or their mom or a coach. It's just there's something about them that drives them to be the best that they can possibly be. And I don't know if you can put your finger on it, but we can always name them. You just named them. So, I don't know how many thousands of individuals have played hockey. Why does Wayne Gretzky become the all-time scorer and the all-time assist leader and the all-time superstar, the great one?
And he's not the biggest, strongest, fastest.
Small little guy. I played golf with him. I played golf with his dad. Went to his childhood home up in Brantford, Ontario, Canada, and spent some serious time with Walter, his beloved dad. Yeah, and got the story. So Walter, he tells the story about Wayne. He had a 90-mile-an-hour fastball as a pitcher in high school. So did Jim McMahon. They chose football. He chose hockey. But what Walt Gretzky did is he flooded his backyard to make a private skating rink, and he put the baseboards around the side. And he got a bucket full of pucks. And Walter's so funny. When I was interviewing him, I said, so did Wayne really say, everybody says he's the king of anticipation.
Yeah.
Did Wayne really say, most players go to where the puck is, I go to where the puck is going to be?
Yeah.
And he said, no, I said that. I'm like, okay, Dad, let's give you some credit, bro. And I said, but why did you say that? He said, because Wayne, as a young boy, would go out in the backyard in the frozen ice rink that he created in their own property. And with this bucket of pucks, he would sit there and he would ricochet the puck off the baseboard to see where it was going to go. Off the baseboard to see where it was going to go. So he doesn't have some intuitive sense of anticipation. He knew it through timed, tested, proven process that if the puck goes here, it's going to go there. And then his dad says, if you want to know why Wayne was the greatest hockey player who ever lived, don't watch him when he's on the ice. Watch what he does off the ice. He's watching the passing lanes. He's seeing who the favorite side of, do they pass better with their right side, their left side? How do they handle their stick on the power play? What do they do? And he was so cerebral about going out on the ice. The second it was his turn to be back on skating, he knew exactly what to do. And you think about it, he innovated. He was the first hockey player to start the offensive move from behind the net. No one had ever done that till little Wayne did. And all of a sudden he comes flying down the ice. He just thought differently, but he put in the hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of extra hours of preparation.
Yes.
Think about Jerry Rice.
Mm-hmm.
I loved, I'm good friends with a guy named Danny Buns. We had the same football coach, Coach Gadd. He played for I've played for the 49ers, lived in Roseville. I spoke in Roseville 18 years in a row, just north of Sacramento. And the 49ers used to train. Their training camp was at Rockland College in Sierra College in Rockland.
Yeah.
And so I'd go up and watch. And Jerry Rice, he was the first guy on the field. He was the last guy to leave. He's famous for taking the rookies up on his mountain runs.
The run. Yeah.
And he was in such extraordinary shape as a quarterback. There's two statistics: receptions and yardage after the catch.
Mm-hmm.
And Jerry Rice always had more yardage after the catch because he was in such extraordinary condition. Steve Young, we love him around here. He's just superstar, a friend of mine. But he perfected the 6-yard slant that went for 90 yards because Jerry Rice would catch the ball on the open run, and who could catch him?
Mm-hmm.
Who could stop him? All because of his intense workout. And Jerry Rice, every time a new rookie would come to the 49ers, he'd ask him if he'd like to go. And sometimes they'd only lasted 1 or 2 days and then they'd flake out.
Yeah.
And he was religious about training and pushing. So was Jordan. So was Kobe. I just think it's amazing.
Well, maybe that is the thing, is the desire to maximize your natural talent through the preparation. And not many people are willing to do that. There's a famous story locally about Karl Malone. Now, Karl Malone's work ethic was on par. And, that guy, I used to take a spin class. I used to teach a spin class down by the Delta Center. I used to take his spin class. It was brutal. It was brutal. You can't keep up with Karl Malone. There's a famous story about Greg Ostertag. Now, Ostertag had one pretty good season, and he had a lot of talent, a lot of ability. And he was going to try to decide how to maximize his talent. So he aligned with Karl Malone. That was the right thing to do. I'm going to learn from Karl Malone. But what happened to Greg Ostertag? He washed out. He didn't complete the program. And the difference between Greg Ostertag, who was very talented, and Karl Malone is the desire and the willingness to do what it takes to prepare. One of my kids' favorite soccer coaches says, champions are built in the backyard. Is there any truer statement than that? Champions are built in the backyard. The kids who raise the bar, who raise the level on their own performance.
And one day at a time. So let's just talk what we learned from football.
Mm-hmm.
To your point, not every play is designed to score a touchdown. I wish the fans behind me in my section at the U would know that. They're dumber than a box of Rolaids. Not every play is designed to score a touchdown. Think about that in sales. Think about that in life. Think about that in preparation. One play sets up the next play, which sets up the next play. And then eventually Dolce drops back in the Copper Bowl and throws that touchdown pass. Eventually that running back breaks through for the 30-yard scamper to score the game-winning touchdown, but it's all set up. So I play defensive end.
Mm-hmm.
And when you're going against a triple option, they're just going to keep conditioning you until I say my defensive tackle's a wuss. I'm going to come down on the fullback, and now I'm supposed to have the quarterback, and he turns the corner and scampers away, and now I'm the bad guy because I don't trust my teammate next to me because he's wussing out or stayed out late the night before. It's all about individual preparation.
Mm-hmm.
Second thing we learned from football, momentum is only as good as your next play. So you change the momentum, block kick, interception, fumble recovery, all these wonderful reasons that we can change momentum, but it's the next play that matters. Number 3, preparation makes sure that we never start playing not to lose. Too many times we're sitting in the stands watching a game, we're ahead by 2 touchdowns. For some reason, the coach stops pulling the trigger and we stop playing to win and start playing not to lose. And we lose the momentum, we lose the spark, and we get defeated. So that's about preparation. What can I do today? When I go to bed, what am I going to do tomorrow when I wake up at 5 a.m.? No matter what, I'm going to get up. I've got to fire up. Another one, there's nothing more insignificant than the halftime score. Too many people give up. Oh, I'm not getting the results from Malone's spin class, so I'm going to quit. Oh, I'm not making as quick a progress as these other folks in this class, and I feel like a wuss. Well, don't compete against them. Compete against what you're capable of, you idiot. You don't hop on a spin class with your, fuchsia spandex trying to compete with the French guy from the Olympic Games. You're trying to compete against yourself. Show up in frickin' raggedy shorts. It's not a fashion show, and push yourself to your ultimate capacity and potential as a human being. Throw up on the dude. Do something that will prove to yourself that you are there for you.
Yeah.
And then the last one is a mindset. You're only a champion when losing hurts worse than winning feels good.
Ugh.
Think about how many times we've been on the bus, going back to the hotel after a game, and guys are laughing. And I want to just break their lips off.
Right.
If they don't care enough, if they haven't put in enough time, and if losing does not really hurt them, they say, "Clark, lighten up. It's only a game." Remember on bus one time, I threw my helmet. These dudes were laughing, and we got drilled. I threw my helmet. "Lighten up, Clark. Come on, man. It's just a game." I'm like, "No, it's not. It's football." Anyway. So I showed up every play at the line of scrimmage in a bad mood. I guess that's okay.
With bad intentions.
Because I could compartmentalize, especially when we played BYU. I'd make up stories like that guy slapped my mom. I'm going to rip his lips off.
It's probably true. There's probably some truth to that.
Yeah, maybe. You never know.
By the way, you say you're not fashion. You don't wear your tights and spandex. Look at those socks.
Look at your socks.
Those
man.
are classy.
Thanks, honey.
Those are classy socks.
Yeah, I try to do well. Actually, they go all the way up. It's a bodysuit because you never know when someone's going to ask me to take off my shirt, and I just
and get on the trapeze.
I know it's one of those deals. Yeah.
I keep wondering as we're sitting here talking, you're not a young man anymore, but you act like a young man. When are you going to grow old? When are you going to? I would say grow up.
I've lost 35 pounds.
You look fantastic. But here's one thing. As much as I align with the cold plunge philosophy, I still have a hard time putting myself in that water. A lot of people do.
Even
for 3 minutes. So I kind of look. I'm confessing on myself. I'm going to have to raise my own bar because I'll take a cold shower in the morning. It's not the same, I know.
But a cold shower is more painful because you don't have any you don't have any real ambient heat, so to speak.
Yeah.
It's just hitting your body, and you're like, oh.
Yeah, I feel
but you
like
sit
that.
in the cold plunge and just I listened to a couple of good songs. I'm a rock and roller, man. There's no and you're just fired up. But that's if nothing else comes out of this podcast, what we have to do is do something every single day that we don't want to do. So why not start the day with that mindset? So for the rest of the day, everything's easy. It's a mental game for me. I'm looking at that water going, this is the stupidest thing I've ever thought of. And then I hop in.
And then I get in. Yeah.
Well, and back in the day, I'd look at the water and I'm like, and 10 minutes later, I'm like, I think I should get in. It took a while, but it's just like poof, and then you become addicted to that dopamine rush. I'll fly. I'll drive to the airport still freezing. Hop on the plane. I'm just fired up. Everybody around me is kind of dozing. I'm just. It's amazing how it does what it does to you physiologically.
And everybody says that. Now, if I go on I like to go on a long bike ride every once in a while, fairly regularly, and one ride I do in particular finishes up right next to a stream up in Park City. And I love to set the bike down and go jump in that ice cold
now we're talking.
Stream. I can do that. It's the other one when I get out of bed and then I really don't have any desire. I don't have to get in the stream, working yourself into the stream. Doing hard things, overcoming obstacles is meaningful.
Just don't, you don't even have to put plural. Just one thing changes your whole mindset. Because when you get in a conundrum and you say, can I do this? Yeah, I did it before. I could do it again.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
That's the power of inspiration. You find someone who's doing it and you're like, I can do that too.
Well, that is the other thing is that when you don't believe you have the ability or strength or commitment or motivation to do it, there are guys like you. And I can look at Dan Clark and say, Dan Clark did it. I know Dan Clark. If Dan Clark can do it, I can do it.
Yeah. Think about it from a complete, even a spiritual perspective. If we can't keep promises to ourselves, how can we expect to keep promises to our spouses and to our children, to our families? And then ultimately, how can we expect to keep promises to God?
Mm-hmm.
I meet so many guys who are just basically blowing off God, blowing off their faith, blowing off their conviction. And if you look into their personal lives, and I'll confront any single one of them in a conversation if they really want to confess their sins and get to the heart and soul of why they've turned themselves off on faith. It's because they stopped keeping promises to themselves. They can't do hard things. And they say, wait a minute, I don't want any structure. I don't want any rules. And I say, well, why don't you play football? You got to stay in bounds. Any of us can run out of bounds. You don't want him on your team. You want somebody like Jim Brown who fought for every yard.
Yes.
For
Walter
10
Payton.
seasons in a row.
Yeah,
me? Exactly. That's what you want.
Yeah.
And if you're not that guy, I don't need, I feel sorry for you, bro. You can change, fire up, and it begins by doing one hard thing and keeping a promise to yourself. In other words, I'm going to sleep. In the morning, I'm going to wake up at 5 a.m. when the alarm clock goes off, and I'm going to go cold plunge, and I'm going to work out hard. And I've read one book a week for the last 16 and a half years. I love to read. So while you're done working out, you're still perspiring, I go upstairs to my library, beautiful library, and I read. I love a book, not online, not Kindle. I read a book so you can turn over the page, you can highlight. And I'm reading for an hour, all before my children woke up, all before I had spousal duties, all before my emails or work responsibilities come.
Yeah.
And I pushed myself. If I can't keep that promise and my alarm clock goes off at 5 a.m. and I'm like, I'm too tired, I blow it off, it wrecks the whole day.
Yeah.
Because I'm not keeping promises to myself, which means I'll just blow off promises to my kids. And hey, we'll play. That's a great story. Can I tell a story?
Of course. But don't let me forget this because, let's do this. You don't forget your story because I just want to follow up on what you're saying. Because the reason I think you resonate with people and the reason you resonate with me is because there's plenty of people who can go out and say the same words that you're saying. There's no connection. And there's no connection because the individual saying it isn't living it. They're just saying it. There's a difference when you say it.
Thanks.
Because you live it and now you connect. And now there's a connection with people. So please tell your story. I just wanted to make that point because I think it's really valuable what you're talking about is if you can't keep the promise to yourself, how can you influence others? There's no connection.
Exactly. Let me just go off on a little tangent. So I've taught public speaking for the last 11 years. And I have a whole curriculum. I Speak Like a Pro course I teach online or in person as well. And what I remind people about public speaking is seek to bless, not impress. That it's never about us, it's about the other person. That if you're nervous before you speak, it means you think it's about you. But if you're excited before you speak, you know it's about the audience. You know it's about the other people. So they leave saying, I like me best when I'm with you. I want to see you again. But to your point, I teach my inverted triangle. I call it the speaker's triangle.
Mm-hmm.
And every single person on the planet, one-on-1, 1-on-12 in a board meeting, 1-on-25,000 at Aeronautic Coliseum website, 1-47,000 at the Superdome. Everybody craves the answers to 3 questions. Number 1, why should I listen to you? It's the credibility piece. Have you done it? Are you currently doing it to our conversation? The second question is, can I do it too? With my past, with my weaknesses, with my limitations, and with my strengths. It's the possibility piece.
Mm-hmm.
And if you answer the credibility piece, you're living it. Why should I listen to you? Have you done it? Currently doing it? It's historical. And the possibility piece, the inverted triangle, begs the question, how can I do it? Is it worth it to me? What's your system? How do I get from where I am to where I want to be? And that's the usability piece. So you get their attention, you get them convicted, and then you basically give them the action steps. So if you answer those three questions in every conversation, but more importantly, in our actions, in the way we live, in the way we talk, I don't want to flatter myself, but everybody asks me, how do you prepare for podcast interviews? I've been on over 500 television radio shows, Oprah, Glenn Beck, at National Public Radio, the list goes on and on. You don't prepare a speech, you prepare yourself to speak. What do you believe? This is just me. You can ask me any question about anything, and I've taken the time to figure out what I believe and why I believe it. And therefore, this is not a show. It's easy to just basically just do what I do. And if I can inspire anybody by my life, that's cool. And if not, that's cool too. So to your point, everybody is an example. It's either a good example or a bad example, but everybody's an example. I mean, Keith Richards, he's either a great example of a guitar player or a horrible warning of someone that should never do drugs.
I mean, where do you land on that?
I don't know, but I love the Rolling Stones, and I love Keith Richards. I met him down in Bermuda one time, but oh my goodness gracious, everybody's an example at some point. So, do you want to look like him? Well, just be a meth addict and kick yourself in the teeth for like 7 hours every morning, and you're going to have a really good chance to be a rock star.
Yeah, that's so Keith Richards is the inspiration for Johnny Depp's Captain Jack character, right?
Yeah, probably. Oh, yeah.
Bumbling around
isn't
pirate.
That funny? Yeah. Yeah. Good night, Bumble Nuts. Yeah. I'm glad you brought that up. I have no idea where that came from. I think it's the title of a book. I don't know. Bumble Nuts.
You brought something up. You're a man of faith. And I'd like to dig into that a little bit, because I've met people who I consider people of faith who may or may not be tied to an organized religion. I don't want to be too controversial here, but may or may not be tied to an organized religion. I'm reading a book on George Washington right now. It's a big book, and it's fascinating. Fascinating. Now, George Washington never ascribed to a particular church and was never necessarily a religious person, but without fail, people will call George Washington a man of faith because of the way he lived his life. One of the things he did I thought was interesting was when he would travel, and he traveled a lot, is he would visit on Sunday services, he would visit a lot of different churches. He would research a lot of different churches. So I want to ask you about that, about faith and people of faith, and whether or not you have to be dedicated to a particular religion to be considered a person of faith or a faithful person.
That's a great question. So I was asked to be the keynote speaker at a non-denominational celebration of faith over Thanksgiving in Holiday, Utah. And I was kind of amused because they invited me to come and meet the board. And I felt like I was at a beauty pageant. They wanted to see if I was going to teach false doctrine or just, if I was a chainsaw massacrist. But every world religion that I could name was represented there. Hindus, Buddhists, Islam, Judaism, Christianity, different sects, Catholicism, the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, Protestant, most of the Protestant religions, Presbyterian, Methodist. And it forced me to really focus in on what my message is to this group, to this congregation mixed. And it was interesting how the opening prayer, as we would call it, was of a different religious tradition than my own, and they showed up in their attire, some robes, and it was a drum procedure. And I didn't understand it. I honored it. It was important to them. It was very, very cool. The second thing that I would bring up to answer your question is faith is about your relationship with God. So if you're a member of a specific religious tradition, if you're a member of the Catholic tradition, and the priest says something, or the bishop or the cardinal says something, even the Pope says something that you disagree with, that might be controversial, that might be like illegal, with the Catholic controversy of some of the priests. The question is, do you leave the Catholic Church because of a man who said something or did something that was controversial? Or do you cut them some slack, basically saying, that's not who I am. My relationship is not with the Pope or the local parish priest. My relationship is with Almighty God. So in the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, which happens to be my religious tradition, I realize how so many younger folks, some younger folks, not so many, are leaving the church. And their claim of leaving the church is because of what some church leader, founder, Joseph Smith, or Brigham Young, or a local leader has said that is controversial or going against something that seems to be part of the new social norm. And so they leave the religious tradition. Well, whatever they do, when someone in the religious tradition says something that offends you, you don't leave the religious tradition because of the person, the man or woman, because my relationship is with God. It doesn't have anything to do with these folks who are trying to help us understand what God wants us to do. That's important for everybody to realize. My relationship is, I am a man of faith who happens to be a devout member of this specific religious tradition. And why? It goes back to Jim Rohn. We become the average of the 5 people we associate with the most. So we congregate with people who believe what we believe. Let's take it into the business world.
Yeah.
The purpose of a leader is to grow more leaders who believe what you believe, not generate more followers. In the world of sales, the goal is not to do business with everybody who wants what you have. The goal is to do business only with those who believe what you believe, so they choose you, not just somebody who does what you do. So if you want to create a championship football team, everybody wants to win. That's not a big deal. But you've already brought it up. We want people who are willing to pay the price to prepare to win, and we want people who believe what we believe. So I remember, being with the Utes, and we go 8-3. We beat BYU. We don't go to the Holiday Bowl because BYU had one more win than we did. We beat them with Jim McMahon at the last minute, last second touchdown pass. I was there. I was part of that team. But we lose 3 games that we probably shouldn't have lost. And I remember, the media jumped on us. And I remember Coach Howard closing the doors and saying, we're all we got. Look left and look right. Doesn't matter what the media says. It doesn't matter what the fan base says. They're questioning our ability. We got each other. So you take us to the Copper Bowl in 1992, the first time the Utes ever went to a bowl game in 28 seasons. You threw for way over 4,000 yards. You're the 5th leading passer in Utah football history, Frank. You come out of El Camino College, you're Culver City, California. I know so much about you. I honor you. What you did in that one season, playing 2 seasons, 91 and 92 for the Utes, is you helped us understand the significance of believing again. That we don't have to be the whipping boy. when we played, I remember playing against the University of Oklahoma, and I'm a defensive end, and they've got Billy Sims, Heisman Trophy winner, in the backfield. They got J.C. Watts as the quarterback. They got Elvis Peacock in the backfield, and first play of the game, all of a sudden I just go flying through the back on my back. I landed kind of in a pool of water, and I hear this crowd go, rah! And I'm thinking, oh no, someone must have scored a touchdown. I waddle up to my knees. I turn to look in the end zone to see if someone has scored. And it was the weirdest sensation. It looked like I had tunnel vision, as if I was looking through a telescope. And what had happened was this pulling guard, he could have kickstarted a 747 jet. He's like 7'3", 475 pounds, mofo. He hit me so hard, he knocked my helmet around my head. I'm looking out my ear hole. And I started to cry. And I get up and I waddle off the field trying to quit. I get to the sideline. Coach stands up. He just points. He won't even listen to me. I turn around. I get back to the huddle. And after you've been crying for a while and you try to stop and you start going, my teammates are like, Clark, you wuss, settle down, man. Cowboy up, man. You come on. I fired up. Next play, I sacked the quarterback. I ran into him by accident, but I caused a fumble. We recovered. We scored a touchdown. We were kicking the crap out of the University of Oklahoma 7-0. It was those last 58 minutes that killed us all. We lost 67-7. Those were the days, boy. And then all of a sudden, Dolce comes in on his white horse, the gunslinger from Southern Cal, baby. And you got us to believe. We weren't faster. We weren't stronger. We still had recruited guys from the School of the Blind. We had a couple of linebackers that looked like Don Knotts, Herbert Milquetoast. They had to jump around in the shower to get wet. I'm telling you what. But the significance and power of belief, bro. So back to the question. Faith is not faith. Faith without works is not faith at all. And everybody wants to throw in the word hope in our conversation. In my law number 4 in Art of Significance, I talk about faith and hope are way overrated. It's about predictability. It's about action. French philosopher Pascal, mathematician, he said, too many live their lives hoping to be happy, but because they only hope, they never really are. It's like we're waiting for somebody to invite us to the senior prom, and we've never even taken the time to learn how to dance. We got to prepare. So being a man or a woman of faith is the preeminent goal of everyone. And then we choose and find a religious tradition who believes what we believe, so we can gather together every Saturday, if it's temple, if it's Judaism, if it's Islam. I've spoken in the United Arab Emirates so many times. They have their religious services on Friday. Even the Christian denominations gather on Friday. So, let's blow off the day of the week. It's not that big of a deal. But we've got to become men and women of faith and then seek out a religious tradition. I'm a fan of organized religion because it gives us guidance and counsel and guidelines and borders, if you will. Mm-hmm. There's a reason why they're called the 10 Commandments. They're really the 10 Commitments. Mm-hmm. And nobody really wants to be told what to do. So you don't obey the commandments. You don't keep the commandments. You live the commandments and enjoy the benefits and energy and clarity of mind and clear conscience that comes from finding your way or having someone help you find your way who has found their way before you.
Yeah. I think your statement is really analogous to the golden rule. I like me best when I'm with you. I want to see you again.
And the golden rule, look it up. It's in every major world religion.
Everything. That's exactly right. Do unto others. I think there's so many similarities when you say that. It's a more understandable way of saying it. And I'm so fascinated by the way you answered that question, because if I could muster an answer, it would be very aligned with that. And I will just say, it's not just the LDS religion. People are leaving religions. The issue to me is, and it goes back to everything we've been talking about, going to church on Sunday is not doing the work. We are not fostering our individual relationships with our Heavenly Father. To me, that is the foundation.
You got
We
it.
have to do the work. You have to foster your own relationship with your Heavenly Father. That's doing the work. And then, when you have a controversial issue, because churches are led by men who sin and who err and who make mistakes, when that arises, what do you say? You don't hit rock bottom. You hit rock.
No matter how hard it gets, no matter how bad things get, no one ever hits rock bottom. You hit rock foundation. You hit rock belief. You hit the baseline core values on which you were raised. So think about religion. I would subscribe to a religious tradition that expects me, that raises my personal bar and expectation, that expects me to be a man of integrity, that expects me to treat women with the utmost respect and put them on a pedestal, not have them walk 5 steps, 12 steps behind me. A religion that respects everyone's right to love whom they want. A religion that basically says service before self is the key. You know, I've spent a lot of time in Iraq, Afghanistan with the troops, 8 military tribute tours, and in the United Arab Emirates, dear friends with Sheikh Nahyan. He's a family friend, great-grandson of Sheikh Khalifa, who organized the 7 Emirates. And so I've studied Islam. I'm so fascinated by world religions. And they have the 5 pillars of Islam. And one is fasting, and one is alms. So they give a tithe.
Mm-hmm.
You know, the founder of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, Joseph Smith, he's famous for saying that a religion is not worth, these are my own paraphrased words, a religion is not really a religion and is not really worth subscribing to unless it challenges you to be a better human being, unless it requires of us a sacrifice, a dedication, a discipline, a set of rules that we can subscribe to. And one of the worst, it's the most evil statement I've ever heard in our entire world. If I can just remind people, when someone says, you do you, that's not right. That's counter God. You do you. Whatever feels good is okay. Mm-hmm. Just be a good person. Everything's going to work out. I totally disagree. I think we have to subscribe to a higher set of laws. And when we're not willing to do that and then blame it on some church leader or some person who offended us, that's just not right. We've got to get ourselves right with God. And God, through history, the way we learned about God, every religious tradition agrees that Adam and Eve were kicked out of the garden at about 4004 BC. And ever since that day, if you will, and the recorded history of humanity started, you have to analyze who taught us about God and our concept of God, and who do we believe him or her or whatever you believe to be. Back to my conversation with the non-denominational celebration of Thanksgiving in the holiday area. Mm-hmm. I proposed a premise, kind of got everybody to raise their eyebrows. I said, just for tonight, wouldn't it be cool if we agreed that there are not 7 gods in heaven arguing about who the chosen people are and who they're going to bless more than others? Wouldn't it be cool if we could just all agree for one night that the same God who made you made me too? That we actually took the time to find out the true character of God, because before you can love someone, you have to first know him and the character traits and attributes. I said, wouldn't it be interesting if we could actually agree that there's just one God, and what that would do for world peace, what that would do for camaraderie, and come to an agreement on what those those character traits, attributes, what those commandments, what those expectations would be that would make every culture, every race, every gender the best version of themselves.
If we had that societally as a mentality, it seems so simple, but wouldn't it change everything?
What? And something else. Sorry to be so Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints centric, but Joseph Smith, he was famous for saying, "We are seekers of truth," and I think I've had this experience, and I know you have too, Frank. Everybody needs to have that experience. On any given Sunday or Saturday, we could get in a caravan. We could do a real estate bus tour and hit every single church, different denomination, in a 100-mile radius or whatever. And in every single church, in every single synagogue, in every single service, we would find truth. We might disagree with this or this, but we would find that nugget or those nuggets of truth that resonate in our soul that would bring us all together.
Mm-hmm.
And in that mindset, why couldn't we do that as a country? Instead of making it, Republican or Democrat, why can't we just say, what do we need to do for America? That you're not a senator from the state of Utah. You're not a senator from the state of Louisiana. You're a senator of the United States of America. Let's start doing what we need to do for America and blow off the Republican and Democratic left wing and right wing.
Well, that's a whole podcast.
We'll do that some other time.
That's
when I mentioned that
podcast.
that tree actually withered a little bit. I shouldn't have brought that up.
The
tree shook like, are you really going to bring that up?
Well, I
get back from South Africa. The number one question on the media: why can't America, the greatest country on the planet, come up with two better candidates than sleepy Joe Biden and Trump? And I said, because anybody with a brain doesn't want to run for president of the United States, because personally, I don't want people to know what my grade point average was in the fourth grade and that the 3 years I was a junior in high school almost killed the whole faculty. Why would I want to subject myself to that kind of humility?
It's so true. And by the way, I feel like America is more centralized than we're led to believe.
I agree.
You tell a story about visiting Russia and how the tanks and how the security is not guarding the Kremlin. What are they guarding?
The television station.
The television station.
The most highly guarded and fortified building in all of Moscow was not the Kremlin, not the White House where I spoke. It was the television station. Why? He or she who controls the hearts and minds of the people control the people. Now, when I get back from my first trip to Iraq, 2005, Iraq, Afghanistan, 16 days, 30,000 troops, 23 bases, 12 bases, 23 speeches. So I'm on a national talk show. And it was kind of the repeat, the point, counterpoint, Democrat, Republican, conservative, liberal. And the host, he says, so Dan, I'm sure that now you're back, you saw that our Iraqi policy was non-existent. And I said, what? And he said, yeah, let me rephrase that. I'm sure that you understand why we weren't able to create a coalition over there because we're not supposed to be in Iraq. It's just it's a bad war, right? And I said, you know what? I said, you're really offending me because you're asking me negative questions that solicit a negative answer. And he says, what? I said, yeah, you're proving that there's no integrity in the news media. And he goes, are you kidding me? And I said, yeah, let me just prove it. Is Michael Jackson one of the greatest songwriters and recording artists who ever lived? Yeah, I've seen him a couple of times live. Is Michael Jackson one of the weirdest ducks who was ever born on any planet? Yeah, they're both true. But one is positive and one is negative. So he or she who asks the questions controls the conversation. So when we tune into Fox or when we tune into CNN, or God forbid we tune into MSNBC, or CNN, Communist News Network, or MSNBC, those folks are complete anti-American. They have no freaking clue or integrity, because I've actually been in situations where they're reporting it and it it didn't even resemble the facts. Let me point this out. I just remembered. So when I went to Iraq and Afghanistan the first time, war was blazing, 2005, and I get there on Valentine's Day.
Mm-hmm.
I'm there for 16 days. The first ever free election in Iraq was January 31st. So you saw that everybody with the purple ink on their finger that they went and voted. And I'm in Florida and I'm watching the television stations report this. And all they reported was there were 11 explosions at these polling stations.
Right.
What a horrific experience. America has no right to do that, force them on this, democratic free election idea. So now I get to Iraq. I get to Camp Victory, downtown Baghdad. And I actually I spoke to the NATO folks. I spoke to the United Nations. I mean, it was awesome, all the commanders. And I'm in Saddam's ballroom. It was awesome. I stole the key and some towels from Saddam's guest bedroom, in his palace. My toilet seat was mother of pearl, go figure. I should have stolen the toilet seat. And I meet the guy and his team who conducted the entire first free election in Iraq. And they showed me the plat map. There were 5,000, I can't remember the exact number, over 5,268 polling stations all over Iraq. Iraq's twice the size of 2.5 Utahs fit in one Iraq. 5,268 or whatever polling stations in Iraq, and there was only 11 explosions, and all our media reported were the 11 explosions. And I'm like, are you kidding me? So when we put those two experiences together, I challenge everyone to first vet the producer of the TV news show that you're watching to find out what his or her political bias is, what their sexual preference is, what their upbringing is. Were they born with a silver spoon in their mouth? Are they all confused about reality? Were they blue collar? Who are they? And then go to the on-air talent to discover what the heck bias they have, because the producer's going to control who they have as guests who have their same political views and their same bias and their same opinion. And then the on-air folks are going to control the conversation based on what questions they ask. That's why I recommend everybody watch BBC. For some reason, they have done everything in their power to maintain integrity, to maintain media integrity.
Yeah.
And we're supposed to be able to trust our news. Well, if they give equal time to both sides of the issue, I agree. And I'm a fan of one specific station here in Utah. My podcast was broadcast at Sinclair Broadcast Group, KUTV. Kent Crawford's a man of integrity. Their CEO, their general.
Absolutely. And
Fresh Living. I can't say enough about KUTV because I've been around the newsroom. I've been around the talk show hosts. I've been around the mighty leader, Kent Crawford. And it's all about integrity. It's all about trying to report the news in a very fair way. And that's not throwing KSL under the bus or Channel 4 under the bus or Fox. I'm not doing that. I'm just elevating my own personal experience as an eyewitness to the integrity of KUTV Channel 2. And I'm glad. I feel a lot better about, Kent's going to say, I like me best when I'm with you, Clark. I want to see you again.
Yeah. Well, Kent Crawford, there's nobody better.
Nope.
Maybe you. Maybe you're better than Kent, but maybe not.
Two-time All-American tennis player at the end.
And I'm biased because I align with KUTV as well, and I get to do some work with those guys on high school sports and stuff. The only downside with KUTV is Dave Fox. I mean, that guy, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah, he's a piece of work. His cholesterol counts higher than his SAT scores, just like you and me. That's where we relate. But a foxy lady. I love Dave Fox, man. He's my guy.
Yes. Dave Fox is the best.
He's so quick-witted and so spontaneous. He's such a great. I don't want to just call him a commentator. You're the color guy. He's just kind of the facts and figure guy.
He's so good.
I'm like 3rd down and 2. I'm like, and they pay you big bucks for that, bro.
It's
Come
the
on,
way
man.
that he says it. 3rd down and 2.
3rd down. Can they get this?
And he has this amazing thing is that he can text and do Instagram and Facebook and everything else while he's calling a game.
Yeah, and taking pictures of himself and sending it out. Yeah,
That's the amazing thing. If you ever look at Dave Fox's camera, it's never pointed out.
I know. It's always, it's so cool. let's not throw him under the bus. Fox,
Any-
forgive us, bro.
Any further? We're not going to throw up any.
My famous
further.
Hendrix song, "Foxy Lady," and I think of him every time. I don't know why.
Why not?
Let's not go there. Why not?
Why not? You know, one last thing.
Not last thing. Come on, man.
No,
We're on a roll,
just on
baby.
this topic.
Come on,
Just on this topic, because I'm sure you've had this experience too. I'm just trying to wrap up the political thing, because we could get so far down into this, but I have friends of all persuasions and sexual preferences and political persuasions, and I feel like I have meaningful relationships in lots of different groups. And when I'm with groups where I wouldn't align politically or in other ways, it seems like a very meaningful relationship. And I always walk away from that thinking, but wait, the media is telling me that I'm not supposed to be I'm not supposed to have a relationship.
Exactly.
That we're not aligned. And I just wanted to support your point of, who controls the narrative controls the
It's
mind.
all about belief.
Yeah.
It was interesting. You just reminded me. So when I was in Iraq and Afghanistan, so many of those times, David Letterman, under the radar, didn't want anybody to know.
Mm-hmm.
He and I would never vote for the same candidate for the president of the United States. And yet we connected on that service before self. He stayed up till 3 a.m. signing every autograph, getting every picture. Robin Williams, over there with him. We would never vote for the same candidate, never agree politically or religiously. He was always there for everybody. He stayed up again till 3 or 4 o'clock in the morning. Every picture, every autograph, it did not matter. So to your point, you resonate with so many different groups. I've spoken in more in more religious congregations around the world of other religions other than my own, more than I've spoken in my own religion.
Mm-hmm.
Because I talk about Jesus. I don't talk about religion. I talk about my relationship with the Lord. So as a member of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, I'm a keynote speaker at the Fellowship of Christian Athletes, which it's well known for being kind of anti-Mormon. They don't think we're Christians. And yet I'm a keynote speaker, get a standing ovation. Because I didn't go there to preach my religious tradition. I found the commonality, the common ground that you find in all of your circle of influence. And when we can talk about the same God who made you, made me too, they love their Jesus just like I love my Jesus. Let's just talk about that and see how we can strengthen that conviction.
Yeah.
It's so critically important that we find our common ground, bro. I'm glad you brought this up. No one's ever really talked about religion or politics on the gajillion podcast or radio or TV shows I've been on, but of course you would go there. But I think it's okay. I don't think we put on kid gloves. I think we talked about it from an honest reality perspective. And again, I'm out there. If anybody ever wants to sit down and have a frank, no pun intended.
Did you mean to do that?
Conversation about life and about love and about our relationship with heaven, I'm all yours. It's so important to me.
Yeah.
I almost died in the hospital with COVID. It's an interesting experience when you can't breathe, and I'm there for 7.5 days. The guy in the room next to me dies, and I have crazy history. I battled throat cancer when I was 8. That's my first recollection of basically saying, when someone says you can't, I'm basically saying, oh yeah, watch me. I had to fire up. I don't know where that came from, but it's been my whole life. But when you come to kind of grips of gosh, I wonder what's going on, suddenly you have to come to grips with your mortality, because we're not invincible. And it's not good enough just to say I was a good person. Says who compared to what? Actually, you know what? I want to bring up one other thing that before we leave the politics. Can we do that?
Absolutely.
So based on service before self, that's very important that everybody understands this. I've had a chance to fly all the fighter jets and all the bombers in the United States Air Force
Mm-hmm.
that have 2 seats, because by law, even though I fly, by law, I cannot take off or land a military aircraft. But in a 90-minute sortie, they always give me the stick for 30 out of the 90 minutes. So if you've seen Maverick Top Gun more than 7 times like I have, I've done everything you can imagine that you saw in that movie. And I've gone twice the speed of sound, Mach 2, over 1,200 miles an hour. I've caught 9.4 Gs. I did the air show with the Thunderbirds. I've had this magnificent experience because of service before self. I've given over 350 free speeches to the military. That's how I serve my country. And eventually, the 4-star general commander knows my speaker's fee, and he goes, Dan, you've given and given and given. What can we do for you? I want to fly an F-18. He said, no problem. I'm like, really? Yeah, I want to fly the Thunderbirds. I want to fly an F-16. I want to fly an F-15. I want to fly a T-38 F-4. So many of my buddies who were POWs at the Hanoi Hilton in the Vietnam experience were shot down in F-4s. I wanted to fly the F-4 out of Eglin Air Force Base, so I did. Had all these experiences. But the one experience that tops them all was when I had the opportunity, the rare opportunity to soar to the edge of space in a U-2 reconnaissance aircraft.
Mm-hmm.
It's worth sharing.
Absolutely.
It required a presidential signature. I ran into General McGillicuddy at the Pentagon. I was a Pentagon appointee for many, many, many years, served on the National Civic Leaders Board, the Chief of Staff of the Air Force, 3 different chiefs, the Secretary of the Air Force. I ran into him in the halls. He says, Clark, what are you doing here? I said, I'm a Pentagon appointee. What are you doing here? He says, I'm a new commander at Beale Air Force Base. Will you come and speak to my troops? Because I'd spoken for him so many times when he was the commander at Air University down in Maxwell Air Force Base, Montgomery, Alabama. I said, yeah, I'll speak to your troops if you'll let me fly in a U-2. He goes, we can't do that. It's a presidential signature. I said, okay. About a week later, he says, I don't know how we pulled this off, man. You're going. I'm like, okay. So I intensified my training. I lost 29 pounds, checked onto the base for a full day of systems orientation, was fitted into my 130-pound spacesuit. You can go to my website, danclark.com. You can check out, actually, I have a YouTube kind of watered down 15-minute documentary on my experience. But I was introduced to my commander, and we climbed aboard the aircraft and immediately rapidly climbed to 17 miles above the Earth's surface, where for 5 hours, I sat in the sounds of silence, looking at the breathtaking curvature of the Earth, gazing into the endless blackness of the universe, pondering eternity, my place in it. And with that unobstructed view of Mother Earth, I teared up. My space helmet fogged up a few times. I teared up as an eyewitness to the words of Einstein, which kind of ties everything we're talking about together. Einstein said, although the concept of a supreme being and a master organizer is complex, we must embrace the mindset of a young child who walks into a large library and says, surely someone must have written all these books. And within minutes, I was an eyewitness to the fact that we are more than mere mortal beings living on a small planet for a short season. What's it really all about? We're all going to die. What's it about? Can't be just 70 to 80, 90 years and then we die. Are you freaking kidding me?
Mm-hmm.
And in that experience, in that environment, my life was changed forever. And everyone wants to know, how can one moment in time change your life forever? When you change your perspective, which controls everything that you think, believe, and do, it changes your life. You're never the same. So let me just give you some quick examples because it ties into the solution of how do we get along as religious traditions, and more importantly, how do we come together in the center, the American majority who are silent, they're not covered in the media, where it doesn't matter if we're Democrat or Republican, we are true Americans. We subscribe to the Constitution, which is a set of laws. We honor the Declaration of Independence, which was a declaration of war. And in the mindset of religion, yeah, we need some governing principles and out of bounds lines. Give me some organized religion to help me find my relationship and sustain my relationship with heaven. So it ties together when we change our perspective. Examples. Is your glass half empty or half full? Or is it refillable? This perspective. If we could somehow have this wall of your beautiful studio open up, and the 5 of us in here could witness the exact same lashing rainstorm, someone might complain, what a horrible day. Someone else would exclaim, what a wonderful day. And the weather did not change. It's perspective. We don't see things as they are. We see things as we are. Third example, I was the guest speaker at a convention on anorexia and bulimia in Buffalo, New York. And I show up, and the stadium is packed, thousands. Actually, it was an arena, not a stadium. Thousands of young men and young women battling that challenge. Hundreds of concerned parents, hundreds of medical professionals, counselors, therapists, all focusing in on anorexia and bulimia. And for the first 15 minutes, everybody who spoke before me confused me because they kept calling it an eating disorder, and it doesn't have one flippin' thing to do with food. So when I'm introduced, I stand up, and the whole time I'm like a linebacker, my head's on a swing, on a swivel, trying to identify a woman in the audience that I could tell from the stage was very strong, very confident, who would interact with me in front of everyone. I finally honed in on her. Let's just say her name was Nancy. And I said, Nancy, I just want you to interact with me. You don't have to answer verbally, but when I ask you questions, could you just answer with body language and maybe your facial expressions? And I invited everybody else in the arena to do the same. I said, Nancy, are you tall or are you short? Are you wide or are you thin? Are you fast or are you slow? Are you smart or are you stupid? Are you pretty or are you pretty ugly? And then as a professional speaker, I put in that punctuating pause to let everyone squirm. And they're looking at me like, you frickin' jerk. What are you doing? And then I looked at Nancy again and I said, says who? Compared to what? I said, Nancy, if we had the ability to transport you to a deserted island where you had no access to fashion magazines or Photoshopped Twiggy models that are non-existent, would you not suddenly wake up every morning and just love you for who you are? Would you not know for a fact that you are enough? I am woman, hear me roar. You don't know if you're fast because you're not running against anybody. And Einstein said everybody's a genius, but if you judge a fish by its ability to climb a tree, it will spend its entire life believing it is stupid. You are okay. Stop competing against others. Only compete against what you're capable of, like we mentioned earlier in this interview. So it's all about perspective. Who are you? But the greatest example and analogy I can give, which ties politics and the solutions to bringing our country together and healing America, let's say this side of my hand is painted white, this side is painted blue. What color is my hand? White, blue. Who is right? You all are, depending on your perspective. So in order for us to communicate at the deepest, most authentic levels of empathy and total understanding, we must be willing to come around on the other side of the hand. We must be willing to come around on the other person to see the other person's perspective and actually acknowledge with integrity, yes, it is white, or yes, it is blue, which turns every argument about who is right, Republicans, Democrats, religion this, religion that, into agreeing on what is right so we can move forward together. It's the secret to parenting. It's the secret to happy marriage. You know, the rebound rate is the key to successful marriage, because my dad used to always say, if everybody in the room believes the same thing, nobody believes anything. And we've all heard, if you're the smartest person in the room, you're in the wrong room. But if everybody agrees, nobody's thinking. We need to have a comparison contrast. We need not to argue, we need to debate, but at the end of the day, come up with a solution and a resolution of what is right, not who is right. I don't want your opinion. I want your counsel. I don't want your opinion. I want I want facts. So in this little rant, do you agree that some things are true whether you believe them or not? Do you agree that everybody is entitled to their own opinion, but nobody's entitled to the wrong facts? And number 3, we shouldn't believe everything that we think. There's a difference. Classic example, September 11th, I know exactly where I was, 2001, when the terrorists attacked. For 30 days after that horrific day, our youngest, most impressionable children, ages 12 and under, 6th graders and under, were caught in this 24-hour-a-day, 7-day-a-week trepidation, constant fear of loud noises. They were scared to death to even leave their home. They were scared at school. And the American School Counselor Association decided that it was their responsibility to spearhead some sort of solution. And they issued a 1-question survey to these young children in all 50 states. What happened on September 11th? And to a T, Every one of them that submitted their answer said, bad men stole jets, ran them into buildings, killing thousands of people, and they kept doing it. What we as adults, what we as parents, what we as educators fail to realize, that our youngest, most impressionable children could not differentiate between real time and video replay. And so if you think about it, every home, every retail store, every school library had their television sets on 24/7. So our youngest children, for 30 days in a row, saw the World Trade Center being attacked anywhere from 20 to 30 times every day for 30 days in a row. It's tough enough for us to deal with reality, let alone misconception. We need to vet our sources of truth. If you want to know about Jesus stumbling towards the cross, you don't ask Judas Iscariot. You go to Mary, his mother. You go to Peter, James, and John, who are eyewitnesses. If you want to learn about any one of our religious traditions, you don't go to an anti-Mormon. You don't go to a Jack Mormon. You don't go to somebody who's left the Catholic Church or somebody who's no longer practicing Presbyterianism or Methodism or Judaism. You go to the church headquarters. You ask one in authority who's in good standing of that particular understanding of religion and get the source and get the facts. We can't afford to watch these lame TV shows that are so frickin' one-sided and biased because that's what's keeping our country apart and destroying America, the country, the land I love, the land we love, the greatest country on our frickin' planet. You don't see lines of people trying to get into Mexico. You don't see people hopping on boats trying to get to Cuba. Everybody wants to come to America. We understand things based on the media that has force-fed us to believe what they want us to believe, and that's not what America really is. Same God who made you made me too.
It's so powerful, and something I really love that you do. And we're talking we're talking politics and we're talking religion, but the lessons that you teach, even the things we're talking about now, resonate through all aspects of somebody's life. It resonates at home because we're going to have conflict at home with our own kids and with our own families. And it resonates in the workplace because I'm not working with 70 Catholics or 70 Jews. I'm working with 70 people.
You got it, brother.
Who have commonalities but are unique. And the things that you're talking about are about finding and appreciating and building the commonalities. We're not so different.
We're not.
We're made by one God, all of us.
Yeah, I believe that. And I think when we die, we're all going to be looking at each other like we could have simplified our lives so much easier. You know what really broke my heart, bro? At 17 miles above the Earth's surface, I could see that all borders are man-made.
Mm.
You know, I support Israel.
Yeah.
And I understand the huge controversy about the Gaza Strip and the Palestinian issue,
right,
and the whole deal. But from my perspective, at 17 miles above the Earth's surface, that border, the entire dissection of that part of the country was created by man. They said, this river is a natural border. This is this country. This is that country. Or man decided that this ethnicity would live here and this ethnicity would live there. The Rwanda, ethnic cleansing.
Yeah.
And when you realize that we're all literally brothers and sisters in the family of humanity, without getting real controversial, the crazy thing about Islam is you have Sunnis killing the Shias, and they both honor and celebrate and worship the same Allah. That is mind-boggling to me.
Right.
So they're not confused or arguing about a different God and killing each other in the name of a different God, they're basically saying my interpretation of the Quran is different than your interpretation of the Quran, and our genealogy traced back to the Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, is causing these wars. We've got to have, at some point, we've got to have some influential folks say enough is enough, and let's just figure it out.
That's right. You know, there's more than a couple things. But as I'm sitting here talking to you and gaining all of this new perspective and knowledge, I keep thinking, everybody knows this version of Dan Clark. Everybody knows the guy who was a TEDx speaker and the guy who's a top 10 speaker in the world and father of the year. And I'm really curious about how we got to this Dan Clark. So I have some questions about that. I want to ask you some questions about that. One of the great, and I do want to mention
apologize. My clothes have gone out of style just since we started this interview. So I should have brought a wardrobe change. My hair's growing out of my ears and my nose in places I don't even need it.
That just happened. Listen, bro.
I know.
Is that the craziest thing? When you wake up one morning and you look and you say, "Dad."
Yeah, you wake up.
What?
Yeah, I go to bed healthy.
What just happened?
I go to bed healthy. I wake up injured, and all I did was lay there. My hips asleep, my foot hurts. I'm like, hey, what happened around here? I'm starting to stretch out in case something happens at 2 a.m. My only hope is that the hair of my right ear will grow long enough I can comb it up over the top of my head and fake all of you out. And apparently every time you got a gray hair, you just said, screw it, pluck it out.
I was done.
Yeah.
I was just done. I just plucked them all out.
I'm going with
3 days a week.
Comb over, baby.
One of the things that you say, I don't know if he really said it, but I hope he said it. And I'm telling this story because I want to go back to your childhood. I don't know Dan Clark the kid. That's who I want to find. I want to know about him.
Okay.
But one of the things your dad said to you apparently you brought home a report card that had like 4 F's and a D on it.
Yeah, but my brother was a genius, 4 degrees from major universities. My sister's a genius. One of the top realtors in the state. Younger brother, Paul, MBA. They're all just geniuses. Then there's me.
Yeah.
Can you see my parents in a social setting? So what does your son Dan do? Oh, he talks. We're so freaking proud. Give me a tissue. Yeah, one time I came home from the report card, had 4 F's and 1 D on it. My dad's response, son, looks to me like you're spending too much time on one subject. And my mom thought I cheated. It was a tough family. Thanks for bringing that up.
She thought you cheated to get that D.
Yeah, Dan, how close are you to the answer? About 2 seats away, man. This is going well.
Okay.
That's just wrong.
Let's talk about Dan Clark the kid. Like, I don't know that anybody knows that story. And you just brought something up I thought was fascinating because I think it goes along to where Dan Clark is today. But you had throat cancer as an 8-year-old?
Yeah, I had an abscess in my throat. It was eating its way, and it made its way to the lining, if you will, the border between our esophagus has 2 parts. Mm-hmm. The one where liquid and food go down to our stomach, and the other one is where our vocal cords are, where it shuts off. Otherwise, we'd choke to death, and that's where we breathe and talk. So, I'm a professional speaker. Take honey, sip on tea.
Yeah.
Why? That side of your esophagus.
That's not even connected to the.
No, it closes off, so it's not going to loosen up your vocal cords anyway. This is the stupidest thing I've ever heard.
Huh.
So I do warm-up exercises. I sound like, a cat that got run over by a bus at like 2:00 in the morning at my hotel, and I get these calls. Oh, they're like, this is not going well. Anyway, so that was kind of the first miracle of my life. Faith of my mom and dad kind of pulled me through because I couldn't lift my head up. I still have those horrific memories as an 8-year-old. That means I was in the 3rd grade. It's so funny. My mom, she's from the Depression and she's still alive today, 95, but she saves everything. And a while ago, I was up at my mom's house, and she goes, "You won't believe what I found." And she found an envelope where she had saved all the get well cards that my fellow third graders had written me when I was in the hospital. You should read them. Dan, I'm sorry you're going to die. You know, you've been a good friend. Before you die,
Can I have your bike?
Yeah, before you die, yeah, can I have your bike? Kind of stuff. Yeah, seriously. And I'm just laughing. I'm going, of course they're honest, and this was wonderful. But if the cancer had progressed one more day, it would have eaten into that side of my esophagus, and I would have never been able to speak or sing. So my childhood, in a nutshell, I would never throw my parents under the bus, but let's just talk. So not on purpose, not because they were cognizant about what they were doing, but I was raised in an environment of conditional love. And how many of your listeners and viewers can relate if we're honest with ourselves? Because my brother, you know, he was in the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. He was in the Quorum of the Seven. He was a church leader. And I always tell everybody he was a general authority since he was 11. You know, and the only way you can tell whether my brother Sam Clark is formal or casual is by the color of his tie. And, you know, all those degrees from major universities, genius, never did anything wrong his whole life. Never had a sip of alcohol, never told a lie, never. Older sister, genius, amazing realtor, just superstar. Both graduated from the University of Utah. Younger brother, Paul, like I said, MBA, superstar, hugely mega successful investment banker. Opened up the UBS operation on the West Coast, ran it for 10 years. He's just superstar, so smart.
Yeah.
And then there's me. And none of them were athletes. My younger brother was, you know, pretty good athlete, but not really focused like I was. My dad and mom were not athletes. So I was the odd man out. And they just straight and narrow went down that path. And I was just being me.
And what does that mean, being you? What were you doing? You were athletic.
Yeah. And that's how I got. That's how I got my attention, bro. And that's why when I was never enough, I had to continuously prove to myself that I was enough. And when I was enough, I was not enough. But think about it, how it motivated me. I was the state Golden Gloves Boston champion. I was the Alpine ski racing champion, raced for GTO Gaddis Training Organization, won the Galani competition at Alta. I was the Intermountain Motocross champion, Sachs 125. Traveled around Idaho, California, Utah, Arizona. I got some pretty good accolades from East High School.
Go Leopards. That's where all my kids
went. And I played football, basketball, baseball, and ran track there. I was an outstanding athlete 3 years in a row at East High School. And going into my senior year, my junior year, I was sun-kissed All-American. I had 10 interceptions as the only starting junior on the varsity football team. We ranked first in the state in football and in basketball and baseball. And then going into my senior year, where I was supposed to, you know, have the world by the tail, be all everything, I get injured my third game of the season. I can't play. So I'm thinking all my scholarship offers, you know how it is. They started whining and dining me when I was a junior. Heard from everybody. State 100-yard dash champion my senior year in high school. I was 6'3", 172 pounds when I graduated. I was a point guard, 800-yard dash champion, so I was recruited as a wide receiver DB. But I'm injured my third game of my senior year, and that just devastated me because I got all my attention. My identity was I was an athlete, and now I'm not. So football ends, and the basketball season starts. Let's go back to my junior year. So I'm the only junior who started on the varsity team. Had All-Americans, all-state guys out the kazoo. And started on the basketball team, baseball team, pitcher. And at the end of my basketball season, as a starter, Coach Malone calls us all in one at a time and interviews us. And he says, "Clark, you're not good enough to play next year." He said, "We got sophomores who are going to be juniors next year coming behind you." And So you don't even need to try out. You're not going to make the team. You're not good enough. So what did I do? So that summer, I signed up for every basketball camp in the state. And the premier basketball camp that attracted all the best basketball players in the state was put on by Dick Nemelka and Condon, who played both for the Utah Stars, and Leroy Mon, who was an All-American out of BYU, who was a superstar big man. When I walked in to sign up for that basketball camp, they had a little trophy about this tall, little white plastic trophy, probably cost $10 max. 1-on-1 champion. And they said at the end of the 5-day camp, we're going to have a 1-on-1 competition, brackets, win 2 out of 3 games by, 2 points, and single, play to 11, win by 2 points. And then you advance to the next bracket. So at the end of that 5-day deal, I said in my mind, I've got to win that trophy to prove to Coach Malone that I am worth taking a chance on to let me try out for the high school basketball team my senior year. And I just focused, and I lost every first game. I had to win the next 2 to advance in the bracket. Lost the first game again, win the next 2. And I make it to the end, and on the bleachers with all the top basketball players in the state, I'm presented the 1-on-1 trophy. I still remember getting emotional. I'm like, thanks. And in my heart, I'm saying, I did it. I can prove I can make the team. And I sat down on the bleachers, took off my shoes, took off my tube socks because my feet were blistered and stinging with the salt, big blood blisters that had popped. And all of a sudden, Rick Bordeaux, West High School, comes strolling in late. He goes and talks to the guys running the camp, and they called everybody back to the bleachers, and they said, Rick has a reason why he was late. Dan, give us back the trophy. You have to play Rick Bordeaux to be the 1-on-1 champion. So now I had to put my tube socks back on, cinch up my shoes so tight, I almost cut off the circulation to try and prevent the slippage in my popped blood blisters. And I had to play him again to win the trophy. And I lost the first game, scrambled, won the 2 games, and I got the trophy back. So when you come to my house, I have so many trophies: outstanding sophomore athlete, junior athlete, senior athlete, Sunkist All-American, American Legion, blah, 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 blah. And they're all in a box in my shed because I didn't do anything. They were awarded to me as a consequence of me just being me. But when you come downstairs and you see my wall of fame with all these superstars and my sports memorabilia collection, there's one trophy that sits right there at the top. It's my 1-on-1 trophy. And no one ever needs to hear the story. But whenever I'm down, whenever I question, can I do it one more time? That little $10 trophy takes me all the way back to 1972. And all you need is one experience like that in our lives. If you're a Major League Baseball player and you get in a batting slump, great story about Wally Joyner. He's everybody's Golden Glove, everybody's all-star for the Angels. And all of a sudden he gets in a batting slump. He goes like 1 for 27. It's so sad. And the organization says, Wally, don't worry. We believe in you. Everything's good. Hang in there. And as soon as the season's over, they trade him to the Kansas City Royals. He's devastated. His batting coach can't help him. What does he do? He calls up his high school coach and says, man, I need some help, bro. I need some strength. I need some encouragement. I'm so down. And his high school coach got him to remember when he was in a high school game, bases loaded, 2 outs, his team's down by 2, and he steps up and goes yard. He turns, trusts his hands, turns on the ball, and hits a home run, a grand slam. And Wally says that one experience all those years ago is enough to trigger adrenaline, to trigger endorphin, to trigger dopamine, serotonin, oxytocin recognition, love drugs that really get us back in tune with the physiology of our body, that gives us that second wind, that gets us that focus, that gets us that reason, that why that's bigger than our why not, to just believe in yourself again and go for it. And he became an all-star again and a Gold Glove first baseman for the Kansas City Royals. One story, and I relate to that because of this little trophy where Now, when I'm hurt my senior year, and I think all my scholarships are gone, and remember, with all the All-Americans and all-state guys my junior year, always at the games, that's where they saw me.
Mm-hmm.
So I got huge scholarship offers. And now I can't play. And now the basketball season rolls around, and my right thigh, I had such a deep bruise. I was growing calcium in my muscle, and I was going to have surgery where they'd have to cut out this giant piece of bone, if you will.
Yeah.
And that would have destroyed my leg. I would have never been able to run or jump again. That's another miracle in my life. And I finally go to the Coach Milne. He starts tryouts, and I show up, and I'm sitting in the bleachers. And after about the third day of trying, he goes, "Danny, why are you here? I told you last year you can't try out." And I said, "Coach, I just need to try out." And he goes, "Then you try out tomorrow." So it was one of those mind over matters. I had to suck it up. Let me interrupt. Summer, 1 week before training camp my junior year, when everybody was a senior starting on the first-ranked team in the state, there's no hope for any junior to start. I'm like, I'm going to start. And I go water skiing. And there's only 2 boats, and there's like 15 people. So they leave me on a beach with a few folks, a couple of babes. It wasn't bad. With no suntan lotion. They're out water skiing. By the time they come and get me and take me out again, and they drop me off again, by the end of the day, I have blistered my feet so bad they look like surgical gloves that you blow up. Look like the udder at the base of a cow. It was the ugliest thing you've ever seen. I'm serious. My toes were so swollen. I couldn't put on shoes or socks. And I've got them in ice. I'm like propped up. And I look like I'm, 3 months pregnant going, please deliver me right now. I was in so much pain. And all of a sudden, that next Monday, football practice training,
Mm-hmm.
mind over matter.
Yeah.
Because of my lifestyle. Somehow I crammed my feet, swollen feet, into those tube socks, put them into my football cleats, sucked it up, didn't tell anybody, and went out and ran my wind sprints, did my thing, shorts, receiver, DB, and made the team. So now going into the basketball tryouts, I had to suck it up. And it was one of those magical days where everything went my way.
Yeah.
I could hit it. I could steal. I could do it. And Coach Milne says, he doesn't have the guts to come and tell me I made the team. He tells the assistant coach, who was my hero, my fan, assistant football coach.
Mm-hmm.
And Coach Ted Wade, I love him to death. He comes and he goes, "Clark," he said, "Coach Milne says, you cut your hair." Because now I'd let my hair go. I looked like sunshine on
Sunshine,
remember the Titans?
Absolutely.
And he says, "You cut your hair, you're on the team." And I said, "Really?" Cut my hair, made the team. And then here's something for parents. In our day and age, everybody says, exclusively choose your sport. I played football, basketball, baseball, ran track.
Mm-hmm.
And because of my exposure on the basketball floor, they could see my agility, they could see my heart, my second wind, my defensive skills. I got my football scholarships back because I reminded them that I was an athlete first.
Mm-hmm.
And even though I hadn't finished my football season, I still was okay. And that's when they kept coming back. And the rest is history. I chose to go to the University of Utah to play football and baseball. And
Yeah.
I love the Utes. Coach Mack, he's like 89 or something right now. And he was there for me. We could talk about that story when I got hurt, but whatever. But anyway, that's crazy. So my whole life is just basically based on Freud's law of sublimation. Sigmund Freud is a complete joke. Most of his philosophies and psychologies were disproven, but his law of sublimation is still intact. And what he basically said is all pain resides within. It's not external, it's internal. Very interesting perspective.
Mm-hmm.
We don't see things as they are. We see things as we are. The same chemical is created in our bodies when we have fear and when we have excitement. It's the exact same chemical. How we define it and interpret it determines whether or not it's going to stifle our performance or accelerate our performance.
Yeah.
Because fear and excitement are exactly the same internally and physiologically. Psychologically, we determine how we're going to react or respond to it. So law of sublimation basically says when someone says you can't, you say, "Oh yeah, watch me." when most people let pain and anger and disappointment and discouragement and so-called depression hold them down, the law of sublimation is you use it as a motivator.
Mm-hmm.
You fire up. You say, I'm not good enough to make my team. What am I going to do about it? Yeah. It's not enough to say I will do my best. We must succeed in doing that which is necessary. End of discussion. Get out of my way.
Yeah. I have so many questions about that and about that story.
This microphone probably was not recording anything. So do you want to start over with hello, Dan?
Yeah.
Go ahead. Go
this
back
is Dan
to my
Clark.
introduction. Yeah.
He's really famous and he's my buddy.
I'm a really big deal in Tooele and in Price. I think there's a couple of folks who have
He's
a
kind of a
poster
big
me
deal
up on
around
the-
here.
Yeah, he's a really big deal. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, so we've already agreed to do part 2.
Okay.
And I really appreciate that because part 2 we're going to focus on the art of significance,
I love it.
which I'm reading right now, and I think that is super meaningful. But it's all of this stuff you're talking about is leading up to the art of significance. But I want to ask you some more questions about this childhood experience and your athleticism. We're going back to your childhood because I think your childhood is fascinating. Here's a question I have. You said that in your household it was conditional love. Is that accurate? Is that fair?
Yeah, but not on purpose. I love my parents, but it's almost like, well, why can't you be more like your brother Sam? Why can't you be more like your sister? Why can't you be like your brother Paul? But think about it in terms of religion. Jesus had a brother by the name of James.
Mm-hmm.
Can you imagine the pressure?
On James?
Yeah. Why can't you be
James
more
is
like your brother Jesus?
I mean,
can you imagine?
Do anything right.
Can you imagine? He works with his father Joseph as a carpenter, and they build this amazing, exotic, hand-carved wooden bench, and he presents it to his mother Mary for her birthday, and she goes, "Thanks, but yesterday your brother Jesus walked on water, man. You got to set your sights higher. You got to have some loftier goals, son."
You know about the thing that he did with the fish, right,
Yeah,
James? Come on. What the heck are you doing?
Jesus turns water into wine. And 2 weeks later, James is at another reception and they run out of wine. And they're like, come on, man. It's the same DNA, man. Come on, pull through, bro. What are you going to do for us? That's how I felt. I was like the brother of Sam.
This is the power of Dan Clark.
I was the brother of Paul. I was the brother of Debbie. It was a rough childhood, man. Come on. I tried to walk on water. When I finally did, my critics said he can't afford a boat. They never gave me credit for the positive side. It was a tough family.
So was your desire? Okay, I have a theory. Okay, and I'm gonna ask you some questions, and then I'm gonna tell you if the theory is correct. Okay. Was your desire to succeed athletically, where you excelled, to differentiate yourself from your brothers and sister, to endear yourself to your parents? Was there anything like that?
It's a great question, Frank. I don't know if I was that cognizant of what I was doing or why I was doing it. I just knew that I had natural athletic ability.
Mm-hmm.
My dad was not an athlete. God bless him. He supported me because I couldn't play catch with him. He bought an old garage door, painted a strike zone on it, gave me 20 baseballs, stuck it in a basket, measured off the 60 feet, 6 inches in our backyard, and made me a makeshift pitcher's mound. And I would throw the ball, drive the neighbors crazy. Bam! Bam! Then I'd go pick up the 20 balls. So I think my parents recognized in me that I was an athlete, and they supported me.
Mm.
They never missed a game, ever. Football, basketball, baseball. Never. Yeah. When I was ski racing, I still remember these folks trudging through the snow trying to just get up to the race course. And all of a sudden I go whipping by and they're like, that's it. Coming out in the dusty, muddy day, watching me motocross race on Sundays, which was against their religious tradition.
Mm-hmm.
But they still supported Dan. So I never felt slighted. I always had their support. But I was just never the right guy. Maybe that's the best way to say it. Not conditional love or unconditional love. Maybe I just wasn't the No, let me completely back up. They saw in me something that I didn't see in myself. Maybe they saw more of a complete human being than a one-sided athlete.
Mm. Oh,
That
interesting.
could be it.
Yeah.
Maybe, and
They thought there was more. Or
yeah, they knew there was more, and
yeah.
they were always 100% disappointed that I wasn't the complete version of myself, that I was just I was myopic. I was an athlete. Everything I did was about sports and athleticism. That makes more sense, doesn't it? So I don't want to throw
Yeah.
my parents under the bus.
It makes so much sense, and I see so many parallels because I feel like at some point you also had that realization. You had the realization that my my identity is not football player. That's not who I am. You had the realization that you were more than that. And as I'm looking at
I did
all of
not
this,
have the realization until I was paralyzed playing football.
okay.
Yeah, I always thought I was an athlete when in reality, that's just what I did. It's not who I am as a man. And when we identify ourselves in terms of what we do instead of who we are, we become a human doing instead of a human being. Unacceptable of significance is what we see.
So, okay, so this is the foundational story. Now, you had all of this experience growing up, and I think all of that is meaningful. The way that you excelled in sports, the way that you determined that preparation and attitude and grit and willingness was your pathway to success in athletics. And maybe your parents thought you were very one-sided, that you could be a more evolved person.
Beautiful.
And you didn't become that evolved person until you had an unbelievable
Until my
obstacle.
sports were taken away from me.
Yeah.
Until my identity was put in check.
Yeah. And that occurred how?
So, University of Utah. So you're bringing up so many memories, bro. So I'm recruited as a wide receiver DB. And I'm one of two freshmen invited to go to the varsity camp. Earl Cook, little running back out of Houston, All-American, and me. What an honor. And so I'm working out with the varsity team at the University of Utah. In those days, you had a freshman team. You just played 4 or 5 games, at Grand Junction, played BYU, played Snow College, you played whatever. But I'm one of 2 freshmen invited up to the varsity. So I'm with the varsity guys, all the big wigs. And we're in training camp. And one of our pre-practice stops on our warm-up routine was hanging from a bar, chin-up bar.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm hanging from the chin-up bar. I'm a freshman. I'm not going to give up. I start to get woozy. I black out. I fall off the bar, and the bar had just been put in the ground. And so the dirt that was supposed to have been put in the cement blocks that held the bar in place, which the piles were still up on the ground, and the holes were open, and my foot lands in a hole, and I blow out my knee.
Oh.
So my chance of a lifetime to be on the varsity team, and I'm in a cast. I tore my meniscus and something else. It wasn't too bad, but I was in a plaster cast for 3 weeks. So now the 3 weeks are up, and now the freshman report. So now I'm on the freshman team. But I'm still working out with the varsity, back and forth. So long story shorter, I still remember those great old days, Bill Meek and Coach LaRue. Anyway, so I ended up, playing on the freshman team, and there's no record books, but I know I hold the record. I caught 14 passes against BYU. Jim Miller was our quarterback, who eventually checked out, went to San Jose State to finish his career. But I caught 14 passes. We were behind, and we came down. Last pass would have been a touchdown to beat BYU. I had 14 passes I caught that game. And I go to the sideline, and he throws it as a slant, so he misses me, and we lose the game. I still remember that. Breaks my heart. But so now, in the first 2 summers after high school graduation, I grow 2.5 inches taller and gained 87 pounds. They moved me to defensive end.
87? And that was the day before
And I kept my speed.
PEDs, right?
Kept my speed.
That was all natural and kept your
Well, a
speed.
couple of my buddies, they were in medical school. They asked me, "Are you taking roids?" I'm like, "No, I don't know what happened. My metabolism changed. I felt like I just backed up to a fire hydrant. I was like, just gained all this weight overnight."
That was a protein fire hydrant.
But I kept my speed, and so I go from the heir apparent strong safety to take Steve Marshall's place. I was going to be the starting strong safety, and
Legend.
And I was kind of a fan of Kenny Easley and the big safeties that were coming out of UCLA and stuff. So those were my heroes.
I watched Kenny Easley growing up.
So I'm 6'4", 210. And then I kept growing 6'5.5", whatever. So I moved to defensive end. So I go from starting strong safety, and the coach didn't like me. He basically said, "Clark, I'm taking away your scholarship. You suck. We don't have any chemistry." And with the new coaching staff, my sophomore year, Bill Meek leaves. My sophomore year, Tom Lavatt comes in. Whole new coaching staff, and his defensive back coach didn't like me. No chemistry. He tells me, "You suck, Clark. You're not going to make the team. I'm going to take away your scholarship." Coach Vince Zimmer, the linebacker coach, he says, "I'm going to take you." And then I became his whipping boy. He just kicked my butt the entire year. Took this undisciplined, wild man, natural athlete, and he just forced me to become a man. And I went from starting strong safety, coming into spring ball, strong safety. I was the starter. I blow out my ankle the day before we go to camp, playing basketball in a pickup game. So the coach comes and says, "Clark, what are you doing?" So I went in, I soaked it out, cut it off, had the trainer tape it, went out, ripped it, worked worse than I did. So I missed all spring training. And then the coach says, "Clark, I'm giving up on you. You can't do it." So Coach Gadd says, "Clark, I'm going to take you in." Going into my sophomore year, I start as the third string defensive end, work my guts out to start. So I'm the starting defensive end as a sophomore. And then got myself into some trouble and decided to go on an LDS mission to pull my head out. Best thing that ever happened to me. And I went to Ireland, and then when I came back, the coaching staff had changed to Wayne Howard, Coach Mack, and the gang. Tom Gadd. So I come back, I go through spring training, and somehow my body, it's still unexplainable, Frank. I can't tell you what happened, because when I came home from my mission, I was still in really good shape. I rode my bike and stuff. But I remember, they wanted to redshirt me because my body wasn't tough. I didn't have the calluses. I didn't have the hand strength, to
the
get off the blocks and
repetition, all the stuff.
But I just started running and lifting weights, and suddenly I could do 385 pounds 5 times on the bench, flat back. I'm still running my 4.640. Something happened in my body, and I was just in cardiovascular. I could sprint the steps. I could go one side of the stadium, sprint up, jog down, sprint up, jog down without getting tired. I run 10 100-yard wind sprints after practice while they're doing my redshirt year. Something happened. So I go into my junior year as the starting left defensive end. And first day of practice, we have a tackling drill. I won't mention the coach's name because it was the stupidest thing I've ever heard. And when I talk to safety conferences, I've been the keynote speaker 7 years in a row, the OSHA, National OSHA Safety Conference. We talk about safety issues. Sometimes we are put in positions by our leaders that cause unsafe acts. And we had a tackling drill, and myself and a guy, we line up against each other. No love loss. He's a transfer from Long Beach State, the Golden Boy, and we're 15 yards apart, and we run into each other full speed, and his helmet hits my helmet, violent head-on collision. I still remember it because it bent my face mask. And in that collision, his helmet goes from my head, suffered a grade level 2 concussion, which is really bad. And it ricochets into my shoulder, severing the axillary nerve on my right deltoid muscle. So he gets off of me, my eye drooped. I had loss of speech. which momentarily came back. My right side is totally paralyzed. My arm's dangling at my side. Coach comes running over. Clark, you all right? What happened? He says, whoa, are you from Tooele? I'm just kidding. He said, you better just lay there. I said, whoa. And a doctor that was present on the field, he came over and examined me, pulls the coach aside. He says, Clark's got serious nerve damage. In fact, he might even have serious brain damage. The coach looks at him and says, how will we ever know? Nice guy. But with all due respect to the coaching staff, they moved the drill.
Oh, that was thoughtful. Yeah.
So I'm taken away. And so I ended up going to the hospital and cried myself to sleep, which is bad when you have a grade level 2 concussion. And so I'm in the hospital, and I remember I get this anonymous jar of blue pills, Dianabol, with a note that says, take these, you'll get better. I promise you'll recover. It was this size. It was huge.
What?
I didn't know anything about roids. I just knew what Dianabol was because I'd heard about it. And trust me, I was tempted. I never took one, never did it. But turns out it was from, kind of the booster / folks who knew my story. They really wanted to support me. And I ended up going to 16 doctors. I went to Craig Rehabilitation Center in Denver, Colorado. This is a cool story because I was a baseball player. I went down to Centinela Hospital in Inglewood, and Dr. Frank Job, he's the one that...
The Curlin Job Clinic.
I was there.
Yeah. It's
in the hospital.
It's world renowned. Absolutely.
Yeah. And Frank Job, he's the one that created and invented the Tommy John surgery that gave Tommy John, the Yankees pitcher, another 5 good years probably. I don't know. You have to look it up. But he had a better curve and fastball after the surgery. So I was under his tutelage, and he gave me 10% chance of recovery. Those guys, Curlin and Job. So I went to 16 of the very best doctors in all of North America. I even went up into Toronto, and I was, and 15 out of 16 told me I wouldn't get better. And then I met a doctor who believed I would get better. It's so important to our conversation. He believed I would get better, and I resonated with him. And the cool thing about this, let's just think about it. He reminded me that knowledge is power, but it has no heart. We don't learn to know, we learn to do. All the information in the world isn't going to make a person successful. It's like the guy who has 3 PhDs, one in philosophy, one in psychology, one in sociology. He doesn't have a job, but at least he can explain why. So bottom line, reason leads to conclusions, but it is emotion that leads to action. Just give me some freaking hope. And hope's way overrated. I can't hope that I'm going to make my flight tomorrow at the airport. I got a plan for it. I got to get there. We already talked about Pascal. But he gave me that glimmer of belief, and belief is what you did for the University of Utah in 1992. Let's not diminish that significance.
You're nice. Thank you.
Think about it. That's what Wayne Howard did. That's what Mac did. You can isolate the significance of belief. So the 2 most frequently asked questions now that I've fought my way back to a 95% recovery is, why did I keep going to so many different doctors? I kept going from doctor to doctor till I found one who believed I would get better. The second question is, what took me so long to recover? It took me 14 months of paralysis, emotional and physical. And then once I figured out I believed I could get better, took another 6 months of rehab. My right shoulder's still totally numb. The nerves never grew back. That's why I couldn't play anymore. Couldn't generate any muscle mass, and I couldn't throw a baseball. So what took me so long? The answer is simple. I was asking the wrong questions. I was asking the doctors how to get better when I should have been asking myself why. Once we answer why, figuring out the how-to becomes clear and simple. So you don't think this is just a raw recovery. Physiologically proven, when we only focus on the what and the how, we only engage the head, we only engage the brain. But when we add to that a passionate why and a compelling want, which means our why is bigger than our why not, physiologically proven, our blood pumps more rapidly, our brains fire, and our muscles engage, which magnifies and maximizes our performance. And if we only talk about the what and the how, no such emotional or inspirational or physical recovery, second wind experience ever happens. We need to ask ourselves, are we transactional friends? Are we transactional spouses? Are we transactional teammates? Are we transactional sales professionals? Are we transactional leaders? Are we transactional human beings? And if we're transactional, we only talk about the how and the what. Here's the system. Kill your audience with PowerPoint. AI, wow. AI is always going to be a tool, and how and when and why and when we decide to use it is a choice. Because AI, no matter how popular and how intense it's becoming, it still cannot create emotion. AI does everything better than a human being except inspire, guide, and motivate. And that's why that's the only role left for a leader, for a parent, for a coach. And we got to rise to the occasion. When we do it better than someone else, it's our competitive advantage. And I learned that all because of my injury, which means that my injury, my paralysis is the best thing, one of the best things that ever happened to me. Don't misunderstand. Not my paralysis, but who I became because of it. That's when I triggered the reality that I'm more than just an athlete. That's when the everything that we've been talking about came to fruition. When my parents, if my dad was here, he would say, finally, my athletic son is becoming a complete human being.
It's perfect.
It's
my perfect.
Finally, my son is seeing what we've seen about him his whole life.
This is the beginning. You transformed. And this is the beginning of what we're going to talk about next.
Because I learned pain is a signal to grow, not to suffer. Once we learn the lesson the pain teaches us, the pain goes away. So in life, there's no mistakes, only lessons. You never lose if you always learn. You've heard that, and that's so good.
Yeah, so good. And by the way, I have learned I hope you know, I have learned so much today. And by the way, I didn't say this in the beginning. I'm sorry I didn't. I know how busy you are. I know how people desire your time. And I know that is difficult to manage because you want to give. You want to give everybody. And you do. And everybody who is around you will walk away and say, I know that Dan Clark spent 5 hours with Muhammad Ali, but I feel like I'm the most important person in the world to him.
Thanks, you are.
Please know how grateful we are for this time. Please know how meaningful it's been. And it even makes me more excited about part 2 because we're going to talk about the art of transformation. I can't wait.
Yeah, thanks. Transaction is just talking about the head and heart. The transformation is adding it's the head and the what and the how, the head. But transformation is when you add that why. And transformational leadership, transformational friendship, transformational coaching is what it's really all about, where we connect at the deepest levels.
Absolutely. That's a great place to leave it.
Yeah.
Dan, you're the best.
Thanks.
You're unbelievable.
Thanks,
I think I had you on this pedestal and somehow you got
awesome.
even higher.
It's the mutual respect and
Maybe we should sit
society.
in a cold tub. Let's go sit in a cold tub together.
Baby. Yeah, magic happens, man.
It's Dan Clark. We're going to see you soon.
Thanks, Franco.
Part 2 is coming up.
Thanks for having me. It means a lot.
Thank you.
Thank you for listening to the Know Your Shit podcast presented by eHub. Don't forget to subscribe and leave a review.